So here's a wild thought. What if that relentless search for the truth was actually holding you back? Today, we're diving into a pretty radical idea from our source material that looking for answers outside yourself isn't just a waste of time, it's a trap.
All right, let's just put the core question right on the table. Is the very act of searching for truth a trap? I know, it's a provocative idea, and that's exactly what we're going to unpack here. Okay, so to really wrap our heads around this argument, we've got to start with a key definition. Our source uses the term truther in a very specific and probably pretty unexpected way. And right away, you'll see this isn't about specific conspiracy theories. According to the source, a truther is basically anyone who places their power and their sense of control outside of themselves. It's the belief that reality is some fixed, pre-existing thing that you have to go out and find, rather than something you actively help to create.
And that idea, well, it leads us straight to the core philosophical problem being presented here. The argument is that our entire concept of an outside reality is just a fundamental mistake.
The source kind of frames our two main worldviews as fairy tales. You've got materialism on one side, the idea that a physical world just exists, totally independent of us. Then you've got religion, the belief in a divine being in some other world, separate from ours. But the alternative being proposed here is something else entirely, a simulation-style dreamscape that is literally generated by our collective attention. So think of it less like a movie we're all just watching, and more like a massive multiplayer video game we're all building and experiencing at the very same time.
You know, the mystic Neville Goddard really captured this idea perfectly. We humans live in a world that is nothing more or less than our consciousness objectified. In other words, the world isn't separate from us at all. It's a direct reflection of us.
So if reality is this big dreamscape, then what about reason? You know, the very tool we use to make sense of it all. Well, the source has a pretty critical take. It argues that reason isn't some universal key to unlocking the truth. Nope. Instead, it's just one group-based logic system out of infinite possibilities, one that forces a specific order on how we're all supposed to see things. Yeah, John Kidder puts it this way: reason is like the enforcement arm that brings a certain slant to mass consciousness. It's the tool that makes sure we all stay on the same page, all perceiving the same limited reality. So from this viewpoint, reason isn't about finding truth. It's about enforcing a consensus.
Okay, so what's the big deal, right? Why does this even matter? Well, according to the source, buying into these ideas about external reality and objective reason, it leads you directly into what it calls the disempowerment trap. Let's see how that works.
The mechanism behind this whole trap is a concept called reification. Now, the source puts it way more bluntly. It's making shit real. The idea is that when we collectively focus our attention and our belief on something, whether it's a conspiracy, a scientific model, whatever, we aren't just discovering it, we are actively manifesting it into our shared reality. And this is the crucial point. The truther mindset keeps you stuck in a loop, always, always searching for answers out there. But this just reinforces the belief that all the power is external. Our source argues that this is the ultimate trap, because it stops you from ever realizing that the power was actually inside you the whole time. And that's why this matters. It's the difference between feeling like a victim of your circumstances and feeling like the architect of your own experience.
Now, the source makes a really important distinction here. Not all truthers are the same. On one end of the spectrum, you've got the benign seekers, people with their hearts in the right place, genuinely looking for answers, but just led astray by this external focus. But on the other, more sinister end, you have what the source calls parasitic mind controllers, those who knowingly manipulate people's attention and energy for their own benefit. And man, this quote by Upton Sinclair just nails the motivation, doesn't it? Whether it's conscious or not. For financial profit, for social influence, or just for plain old ego, there's a really powerful incentive to keep pushing these external stories and to keep people looking for answers everywhere but within themselves.
All right, so if the truther path is a trap, then what's the alternative? Well, our source proposes a totally different kind of explorer, the psychonaut. And their journey isn't outward, it's inward. And the difference between the two? It's night and day. The truther is laser-focused externally, always trying to figure out what's happening out there. The psychonaut, though, understands the external world is just a reflection. They focus on the internal dream because they know that's where reality is actually being shaped. It really is an inside job. It's like the author Ken Eaglefeather said, reality, or at least the perception of it, is an ever-expanding dream.
The psychonaut doesn't try to fight the dream. They learn how to become a conscious dreamer, to master their own perception and ultimately their own creation. So the big question is, how do you actually make this shift? Well, the source offers up a really practical, actionable plan that it calls a truther detox. Think of it as a way to cleanse your mind of these disempowering mental parasites. And the plan is super simple. It's just a 1-week challenge. First step, go cold turkey on all the fear-based media and negative content. Just stop. Second, stop all the endless research into external problems you have no control over. And third, take all that time and mental energy you've just freed up and focus it completely inward on empowering yourself.
And hey, if you're sitting there wondering, okay, but what am I going to do with all that free time? The source has some awesome alternatives to doom scrolling. Instead of researching chaos, create your own vision of a positive future. Instead of just consuming negativity, learn a new skill, move your body, or just find ways to laugh at how absurd it all is. The whole point is to shift your attention from what you're afraid of to what you actually want to create.
And that brings us to our final lingering question. This whole idea we've explored, it all boils down to this one point. In a world that is constantly begging you to look for external enemies and saviors, is the only real way out, the only true path to empowerment, to go in? A thought to leave you with.